ENCA News Chief Kanthan Pillay has apologised unreservedly to those who were offended by what he describes as his irresponsible and ill-conceived tweet. Palais likened one of his own reporters who resigned to a rat running towards a sinking ship. The tweet came after reporter Maseko had handed in his resignation. He was apparently then told to leave immediately and not to serve a notice period. Palais' Twitter comment sparked criticism on social media about how journalists in some newsrooms are treated. In a statement issued earlier this evening, Palais said he deeply regretted the statement and that he had placed his employer, colleagues and family in a most embarrassing position. He said he accepted that his actions were unbecoming of a senior manager in any newsroom. The matter, he said, would be further investigated and the outcome would be binding on him. Meanwhile, Maseko says Pillay should do the right thing by phoning him to personally apologise. We joined now via Skype, though, by Kate Skinner from the South African National Editors Forum. Kate, a very good evening to you and thank you so much for speaking to us. You had earlier issued a statement raising concerns. How do you feel about this apology being issued by Kanthan Pillay? Do you welcome it?
Yes, we do welcome it. I think it's very important that he does apologise. It was really an appalling tweet, very ill-advised. We welcome the fact that he has said this because it was very important that he did.
But does it deal with the concerns that you raised, though, in your statement? Because you raised the issue of interference within newsrooms and how that shouldn't happen. Journalists should be protected. His apology, does it deal with those concerns?
No, it doesn't deal with those issues because the issues for us were particularly around censorship. Some Kele had said that there were a number of stories that had actually been censored, and he mentions the particular stories. And so, in fact, we called for a meeting with ENCA to say that we wanted to talk about those particular stories that had been censored. Because for us, as a media freedom organization, any kind of censorship is hugely problematic.
Let's talk about censorship and its true nature. The offence caused to all, and specifically to Mr. Maseko, the SABC and the management of E-Media, it says. So in making reference to these entities, including the SABC, does it not then imply that in his statement he was encouraging some form of censorship? Because it seems to imply a correlation between a rat running to a sinking ship.
Yes, a very unfortunate statement, to be referring to a journalist as a rat, referring to the SABC, it seems, as a sinking ship. Hugely problematic. The issues, so all of those issues have to be dealt with, and at least he has actually made that apology. Though I think what's important, in terms of the meeting that we're going to have now with ENCA, and they have promised to have this meeting, is to say that, we will then look at, so those issues, of course, are on the table, but very importantly, the issues around censorship and the particular stories that Samkele refers to, where he says that, the stories didn't happen or that there was a particular slant given. And we need to get to the bottom of what happened in terms of the censorship of those particular stories.
And I don't want to corral you into any particular position, but I do want to understand from you, you found those comments problematic, especially how he refers to Samkele and how he refers to the SABC. What in particular did you find problematic? What is it that raised your ire?
Well, the thing is that it's extraordinarily disrespectful. And I think the thing that is important is that what I think we want to do as the media industry is create an environment where we can report without fear or favor. What happens is that when you have these huge battles between journalists and between media houses, it just makes it more difficult, for journalists to kind of work in an environment in our industry where there is, a certain level of respect. I think it's very important that we are respectful to one another because it undermines our credibility when we're not. and it also creates an environment which is problematic, for journalists to report without fear or favour.
And I think that's precisely the point. Without entering the fray, how the SABC as an employee, including its employees, if you refer to them, and that's why it's raising the issue of censorship, because there are myriad of ways that can come up, isn't it? Because if you're talking about censorship, we're talking about the curtailing, suppression or prohibition of books, films, news considered obscene, politically unacceptable. Because then the question is raised, is that what it was implying, that the SABC as a public broadcaster is politically unacceptable, a threat to security, that it's considered obscene in referring to it in that manner? And while I accept the apology, and it's not for me myself to accept, but the fact that it's out there, the question is, has it not then created doubts around the credibility of the SABC and its employees referring to it in that way?
Yes, I mean, I think that it's a very, very derogatory way to refer to the SABC, our public broadcaster. And you're right that he has unreservedly apologised for this. But I think that going forward, what we want to ensure is that we don't actually treat our colleagues, and we don't refer to other media houses in these very derogatory ways. I don't think it helps us as an industry, and it is actually one of the things that Sanef itself has raised in terms of this inquiry into credibility and ethics that Judge Kathy Satchwell is leading. And we've said, the kind of disparaging remarks that we make about fellow journalists and fellow media houses is actually undermining the credibility of the media. And we've actually asked her to investigate that as one of the issues that she investigates.
And you said that Mr. Masego himself has offered to be part of the media ethics and credibility inquiry. He's offered to appear before it. Is that correct?
Yes, he has, and we absolutely welcome that. It was, something that we basically said that a very positive development. The inquiry's specific brief is to look at ethics issues. We believe that the issues around censorship that he says that he wants to raise are precisely the kind of things that Judge Kathy Satchwell and her panelists will be looking at. The brief is quite wide because it does look at a whole lot of different things, including, issues of ownership, issues of censorship in the newsroom, fights within the industry itself. I mean, a lot of different issues, but certainly what Pillay wanted to raise did fall very, very much within the brief.
And he has raised quite a number of issues that you say are quite disturbing, and I think the fraternity itself would find it that way. But you also go on to say that Sanef and journalists in newsrooms and editors, etc., should protect journalists from these kind of actions. So should you find that there is veracity to these claims as Sanef, how would you protect somebody like Mr. Masego and other journalists who raise such issues of interference in newsrooms?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a good question. So what we're hoping is going to come out of this inquiry is a very clear set of recommendations around what to do about censorship issues in all its myriad forms. So we've asked the panel for very clear recommendations, but also an action plan, which we will adopt then at a major conference that we will be holding in June next year. So yes, we do need to look, practically, what should journalists do? What kind of ethics codes do we need to put in place as media houses to stop this kind of thing happening? We're hoping for some very practical recommendations around these issues.
Okay. Has there been official complaint laid against Mr. Kanthan Pillay? Do you know?
I'm not sure about that. As far as I know, I mean, I haven't seen anything. All I know is that Pillay is going to the inquiry, but in terms of a specific complaint, I haven't seen that.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Kate Skinner from Sanef.